Thank you, sir. Good evening. I call this January 23rd meeting of the Morrisville Town Council to order. Thank you to those watching via live stream and those who are watching a recording of this meeting. On January 29th, a video of this meeting will be uploaded to www.morrisvillenc.gov/government. Our Sergeant at Arms tonight is Sergeant Brian Pinnell. He has been in law enforcement for nearly 27 years. He started his career with Raleigh Police Department before joining Morrisville Police in 2000. Sergeant Pinnell is currently a patrol sergeant over the 10 Squad. Thank you for being with us here tonight. At this time, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Rao.
Thank you, Mayor Colley. Last week, our last council meeting was before the MLK Day, and we were going to do an invocation, and we decided that the best person to do an invocation for MLK, especially as we prepare for Black History Month, is Reverend David Jones from the Shiloh community, Shiloh Church, Missionary Baptist Church. And he's here today to deliver this evening's invocation. Pastor Jones just celebrated his 13th anniversary at Shiloh, and so we're so grateful for all the Shiloh community does for our community and for them serving as a real foundation of Black history in Morrisville and a pillar of hope for all of us. So thank you for being here, and we'd be honored to hear your contribution this evening.
I want to say good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
If you don't mind, all believers, if you would, bow your heads with me. Almighty God, God the creator, God the sustainer of all things. It is once again, Lord, we humbly stand before you. First of all, God, we want to say thank you. Thank you for all that you have done, all that you're doing now. We thank you for what you're going to do. And therefore, Lord, we ask that you allow your Holy Spirit just come in the midst of this gathering. Touch us all with the Spirit that will lead us to make right decisions that will benefit all people. We give you praise, Lord, for your Son, Jesus, who stood for all the world. So therefore, God, we receive your Spirit in the midst of this session. Guide our hearts, guide our thoughts, guide our words. Let the words of our hearts and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, Lord. You are the strength of us all. You are the Redeemer of all people. It is in Jesus' name I pray this prayer. And all God's people said, amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. At this time, if you're able, please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry. I did. Thank you, sir. Before we adopt tonight's agenda, Town Council policy is to review and ensure there are no conflicts of interest or appearance of conflict of interest with any items on the agenda. Does anyone want to share anything at this time? Okay. Before we adopt tonight's agenda, I propose we amend the agenda to remove the Park West item because the applicant has withdrawn their application. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda with that item removed.
I'll make that motion. I second the motion.
Motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any?
Mayor, if I may, could we call out specifically which item was removed?
11C.
And say what the purpose was for the public record? I think your intent to move along quickly, you forgot that this is a recorded meeting and we need to make sure that the public is aware of it.
I'll happily read out the name of that item that we're removing.
I did not vote, but because I felt rushed.
I believe we will go ahead and retake the vote after I read the item, if that's fine. They have withdrawn the application. Do you have another question about that? Well, let me say what it is, and then we'll have the answer from the town manager. 11C was going to be public hearing on proposed major amendment to the Park West Village Mixed-Use Planned Development District, REZ 22-0012. Okay. We have a question about this process, please, town manager.
So, Mayor, they have pulled the item from tonight. I think they're considering revisions to it that may be withdrawn to be resubmitted, but for tonight, they've pulled the item at their request. They're revisiting their application.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions about that?
That's very helpful. I appreciate you clarifying that so that others will be aware.
Excellent. So I'm going to, town attorney, is it okay for me to start the vote again, or? Okay. So can we already have a motion and a second. We'll keep there. All those in favor?
Just to clarify, the motion is that they have withdrawn the application, but that's not quite what they have done.
They have requested that it be pulled from tonight's agenda. So I think your item is to, your action is to amend the agenda based on that item being pulled.
Pulled.
That
Okay,
being
would-
the case, I withdraw the motion.
Would you rather just amend it to meet what he just said?
Yes. I amend the motion to reflect that the applicant has withdrawn pulled the item from tonight's agenda.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are we good with that? Ms. Jones, thank you very much. Can we have a re-second from that, Councilmember Rao, please?
Second.
Thank you very much.
All right.
We good? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you very much. We have an agenda for the evening. We are now at item 6, consent agenda. There are 5 items on this evening's consent agenda: drainage easement abandonment associated with the Spark development, resolution awarding a police service sidearm, approval of advisory committee chair and vice chair appointments, resolution appointing an interim town clerk and deputy town clerk, and approval of December 2023 town council meeting minutes. Would anyone like to talk about any of these items before we vote on the consent agenda? And as a point of privilege, I'd like to recognize Town Manager Zudema to talk about one part of this real quick.
Thank you, Mayor. One item on your consent agenda is the appointment of an interim town clerk and also a deputy town clerk. So I'd like to take just a moment to introduce you to our interim town clerk. This is Michelle Parker Evans. So Michelle is a retired city and county clerk, most recently having served with Durham County prior to retiring. Since that time, she has gone into consulting and has done some interim roles as a town clerk. She most recently served Burlington in that manner a couple years ago. And as we had our clerk resign, I had reached out to see if I could find someone to help us for a little while. And I didn't just find someone, I found Michelle, and she has already hit the ground running. She is a fantastic addition to our staff. I only wish she was available full time, but she's made it pretty clear to me that's not going to happen. So we are very fortunate to have her. So we are appointing her, you are appointing her as our interim town clerk tonight, and then you're also appointing Bianca McCain, who is on our staff, as the deputy town clerk. And that is essentially releasing our own Erin Hudson from those responsibilities. But we'd like to thank Erin. She is also helping Michelle get oriented and get us situated through the next few weeks while we begin a process to hire a new town clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I'm ready for a motion to adopt this evening's consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion in a couple of seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously 7-0. Welcome to the team. Thank you very much for joining us. There's nothing pulled from consent, so we're on item 8, administrative reports. There are 4 administrative reports this evening: a quarterly capital projects update, a small business program update, Morrisville grants program update, and FY 2024 mid-year Q2 budget financial admin report. Administrative reports are provided as information-only items unless council has questions. Are there any questions on any of those items? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. We have 5 presentations tonight. A proclamation recognizing National Mentoring Month, proclamation recognizing Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, proclamation recognizing Black History Month, proclamation recognizing Surya Namaskar, and Town Center Amenities Update. Councilmember Ann Rabadi will read the first proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm proud to read this proclamation. Mentoring has played a huge role in my professional career. Proclamation recognizing January as National Mentoring Month. Whereas mentoring is a long-standing tradition in which a dependable, caring individual provides guidance, support, and encouragement to facilitate the social, emotional, and cognitive development of a person. And whereas a mentor is a person or friend who guides a less experienced person by building trust and modeling positive behaviors, and an effective mentor understands that his or her role is to be dependable, engaged, authentic, and tuned into the needs of the mentee. And whereas continued research on mentoring shows formal, high-quality mentoring focused on developing the competence and character of the mentee promotes positive outcomes such as improved academic achievement, self-esteem, social skills, and career development while successfully reducing substance abuse, academic failure, and delinquency. And whereas mentoring, in addition to preparing individuals for school, work, and life, is extremely rewarding for those who serve as mentors. Whereas recognizing January 2024 as National Mentoring Month will help call attention to the critical role mentors play in helping all people realize their potential and encourage others to lead by example, finding ways to give back to the local community by participating as a mentor in the critical, life-changing moments of the mentee. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville does hereby recognize the month of January 2024 as National Mentoring Month in the town of Morrisville, North Carolina. And I understand we have Erin Callahan from Big Brothers Big Sisters to accept the proclamation, or perhaps we don't. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, there was some issues with my phone today. I apologize. Proclamation recognizing January 15th as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. devoted his life to advancing equality, social justice, and opportunity for all, and challenged all Americans to participate in the never-ending work of building a more perfect union. And whereas Dr. King's teachings can continue to guide and inspire us in addressing challenges in our communities. And whereas the King Holiday and Service Act, enacted in 1994, designated the King Holiday as a National Day of Volunteer Service and charged the Corporation for National and Community Service with leading this effort. And whereas since 1994, millions of Americans have been inspired by the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to serve their neighbors and communities on the King Holiday. And whereas serving on the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday is an appropriate way to honor Dr. King, meet local and national needs, bring our citizens together, and strengthen our communities and nation. And whereas the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service is the only federal holiday commemorated as a National Day of Service and offers an opportunity for Americans to give back to their communities on the holiday and make an ongoing commitment to service throughout the year. And whereas Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service projects are being organized by a wide range of nonprofit and community organizations, educational institutions, public agencies, private businesses, and other organizations across the nation. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville does hereby proclaim January 15, 2024, as Martin Luther King Jr. Day and recommend its observation through participation in a day of service. Signed by Mayor T.J. Cawley and our clerk, Michelle Parker Evans, interim town clerk.
Thank you very much. And I'll read the next one. This proclamation is recognizing Black History Month. Whereas Black History Month is observed annually across the United States in February, and serves as a celebration of African American achievements, as well as a time to recognize the crucial role they have played in U.S. history. And whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter Godwin Woodson, noted African American scholar and son of formerly enslaved people, founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which was later renamed the Association for Study of African American Life and History. And whereas Dr. Woodson initiated Black History Week, February 12, 1926, which was celebrated the second week of February for many years, as this coincided with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. In 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and became established as Black History Month. And whereas observing Black History Month provides opportunities to gain a deeper understanding of African American history and acknowledge the centuries of struggles for equality and freedom, and whereas Morrisville is particularly fortunate to have a rich, diverse culture. The Shiloh community was established in 1867, just 15 short years after Morrisville was chartered. Prior to the Civil War, Shiloh was home to free African Americans. During the month of February, the town has emphasized the importance and impact of Black history in Morrisville through the lens of the Shiloh community by highlighting historical markers and greenway signage through social media and other resources. And whereas we are immensely proud of our history and diversity and will continue taking on the challenges to advance reforms and break down barriers, recognizing that despite progress, racial prejudice still exists in America. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville does hereby recognize February 2024 as Black History Month and encourages all citizens to celebrate our diverse heritage and culture and continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Pastor David Jones back up to the dais, and Councilmember Rao and I will present these proclamations. Right on up. You, sir, are front and center. There we go. We'll get a little photo, and then you can say some more words if you wish. Is there anything you'd like to share with the group?
The only thing I would like to say is thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for recognizing this community as what it is and what it has been. And what it
will be. Exactly right. Good to see you, sir. Take care. Okay, and I will read the next proclamation. And this is a proclamation recognizing Surya Namaskar. Whereas yoga is an ancient process of keeping the human mind and body in good health, spiritual training is considered a part of physical training from ancient times in India. The Surya Namaskar, sun salutations, is a special sequence of yoga postures that provide the key health benefits of yoga in a very succinct package. Whereas Hindu Swamastak Sangh is a voluntary nonprofit social and cultural organization which aims at preserving and passing on the ancient Hindu heritage and cultural values to the next generation of Hindus to raise awareness around the world. And whereas HSS is organizing a Health for Humanity Yogathon, and the goal is to complete 1 million Surya Namaskars by 12,000 participants, collectively and individually, to promote friendship, mutual understanding, and good health among multicultural and diverse members of the community. And whereas yoga enthusiasts, yoga studios, local schools, and organizations are participating in this event, sun salutations can be included daily during this time as a part of physical activity and/or spiritual training. Now, therefore, we, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville, do hereby recognize the Health for Humanity Yogathon and thank HSS for their outstanding job with helping to preserve and promote the ancient heritage and cultural values around the world. So, thank you for that. Moving on to the next. And now Town Manager Zudema will provide the next presentation, please.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Bringing up the team here behind me. So we're here tonight with representatives from Clearscapes. Of course, our partners from Sing and Kimley Horn are also in the audience. So we have been working as a group to bring you back some additional reference around the amenities for the town center, particularly the town green. We had talked with you several months ago. You had offered us some guidance on what you might like to see there, some options that were expressed to you. So our team, including particularly Mary Fawcett from our Parks and Rec Department and Mark Spagnoli and his staff have been meeting. Also want to thank Eric Thomas from DFI for being here tonight, continuing to support this project. So the goal for tonight is to allow Clearscapes to walk you through the work that's been done the last several months. I think they have some very exciting 3D images to share with you that you will be excited about. Going to talk to you about the different amenities and then ultimately seek some guidance on a couple of these amenities that will potentially allow them to move into full design for the Town Green project. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Clearscapes and be ready to help them if I need to. Thank you.
Good evening, Fred Belden with Clearscapes, and I'm here with our project architect, Cameron Lassiter. So tonight, as Town Manager Zudeman noted, we're here to offer some updates on the process to date and where we stand with the programming and conceptual design process. Do it there. All right. We always like to start with this slide. These are the words that all of you were kind enough to offer to us for some guidance in how this community sees itself and some of the values and ideas that are most important to all of you. So I think hopefully as we go through this presentation tonight, you'll see how we're starting to incorporate some of those values into the programming and space making for the park. And moving ahead, you'll see it ultimately as we get into the design process. Up on the screen is a current iteration of where the overall park plan stands. You'll note that it's very similar to what you've seen in many ways, but we're going to highlight a few key evolutions that have occurred over the last several months. Next slide. Working from the bottom up, as highlighted in pink, we've been working carefully with Mary's team as they've been thinking about how they're going to program and utilize the stage and porch area of the park. That's resulted in some interesting changes that you'll see where we started to pull apart some of the pieces and distribute them around the park a little more. Area noted in yellow is the cottages and the walkway along there. We've begun working with the site team to look carefully at the topography for the site and how we can incorporate it to our best advantage to create sight lines and view lines as well as enhance access. The area located in green, one of the notes is that the restrooms, which were formerly located down towards the southern end of the park, have been shifted up more to the midpoint to provide more accessibility and convenience for the greatest number of users. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit tonight about the promenade or the north end of the park and how to best utilize that space to enhance the visitor experience. With that, I'll turn it over to Cameron. One note up front, we are showing some 3D images, but it's important for us to note that these are not yet designs. These are not intended to represent architecture. What we're trying to provide is a sense of scale and understanding of how the spaces can be used, which will lead into the architectural design.
Thanks. So this view is showing the development that we've been working on with town staff of what these walkways that take you around the lawn will be. One is, we've kind of divided it into two zones. The lower portion that you can see on the right-hand side of the 3D view is that perimeter path that circulates continuously around the lawn. The upper portion is being developed as a direct relationship with the cottages, which are those small kiosks along the walkway. And these are kind of an intermediary between the streetscape at Foxglove, taking you down through the cottages and to the lawn space. We've developed them as a great seating zone for people using the cottages, eating, things like that. And to create a great view from those areas down to the stage if there is an event going on or a show. So the idea is that this in addition to providing the great view, also does a great job of helping us address the site topography, like Fred mentioned. The site slopes north to south down towards the stage. So this helps us relate between the upper level and the lower level. What you can see here are in the foreground stairs that are located intermediately between some of the along this path, and between those zones are these areas of stadium seating that can be used for both sides, both on the lawn side as stadium seating and on the cottages side as additional seating for the tables. We've also added a tree and softscape buffer zone between the lawn and these paths, and that helps to soften that area. And the idea is that these would be, when mature, the trees would be tall enough to not prevent or not to distract from any views from this upper area to the stage. And this is another view looking from the lower southernmost end of the walkway. Thank you. Excuse me. Looking north, and what you can see here and what this one is really showing is that the view, the walkway widens as you get further south along and towards the stage. And what that helps with is, well, you'll see when we get to the later views. Zooming in on the center portion, this is where we've started to look at relocating the restrooms to. As Fred mentioned, these have been relocated from being adjacent directly to the stage to this central location along the site. And the idea is that they are easily accessible by anyone throughout the center, and particularly the people that are using the cottages and the seating area around the cottages. What you can see here is that we've created a sloped walk from the lower level up to the level in front of the restroom, so that anyone who needs to use a sloped walk rather than stairs can use that in a very convenient location. And this is an area showing the access between a few of the cottage buildings, just to show how those can be activated in really lively spaces. Do you have anything before we move on?
I think it's great. All right, moving on back to plans a little bit. The porch remains roughly a 30 by 50 foot stage area, as we've talked about to date. And with this, you'll note that the support area has been pulled off to the lower right corner in the plan, adjacent to the education garden. In working with Mary's team, part of the goal of this is to allow the porch to be more dynamic and a more architecturally compelling silhouette as we move into design. And it allows greater flexibility with the use and contains all of the support traffic for stage back in that parking lot area to the lower south. The other thing that we're hinting at in this plan is we've been working carefully with both Mary's team for staging and access, and also with the fire department for life safety access. And all of this is now graded out and worked that we will have vehicular access through the parking lot that you see on the bottom of the screen, with vehicles able to travel up along the west side of the elliptical walkway and exit out onto the street to the north. To be clear, that's not an everyday road, but it is a safe pathway designed for vehicular traffic to manage both events as well as life safety needs for the park. The support space, as we've scaled it, currently is about 900 square feet. This includes a green room with space for about 12 to 15 people, as well as a toilet. It also includes storage for the stage function, as well as for the education garden and electrical and mechanical service for the site. Again, important note on these, we are showing some general canopy views, not as an architectural proposal at this point in time, but to understand the overall scale. and also to show that by freeing up the back of house spaces, we create the opportunity for a much more dynamic stage structure. This is a view from the front with the scale from the lawn. And next slide is just a view from the side to understand how the scale fits within that grove area. Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
Was there any consideration about the cottages having a second floor with some chairs or tables up there?
It's a great question. We're letting the process play out with leasing, but the way that the cottages are structured, what you might have noticed in some of the earlier views is we're trying to create glass and transparency on all sides at the ground floor. And by doing that, we're preserving the center space as potential structure to allow for rooftop dining on one or more of the cottages.
Just wondered if there had been any, I can't tell which way the porch is facing and which way we'd be facing if you were looking at the show that was going on there.
Mhm.
I do think that it's important that we try not to be staring directly into the sun and
It's a great question.
watching the show. I just the
Mhm.
view from the southeast made me think that I think you'd be facing almost due west when you're looking directly at it. And so if the sun's going down, I'm just concerned about that. It's just something to put in the hopper. I understand
Right.
it's a conceptual design.
It's a great question. You want to jump back to the plan really quickly? So in an ideal world, amphitheaters are set up on a true north-south axis, and that gives you the best light control and glare control for various times of the day. And the ellipse is set up on a true north-south axis. The stage form we're playing with slightly, and we're going to be at or very close to north-south, which is optimal for the view for large events. And then we're also playing with options of having the backstage area open into the grove for a smaller, more intimate setting as well. Mhm. Okay, next slide. The other area that we wanted to touch on is the north end of the park. And we spent a lot of time going back and forth as to the best fit for this end of the park. This is the area that had been designated for a water feature. As we've been looking into water features and balancing the cost and the approach with the resources that have currently been allocated to the project, what we're finding is delivering a signature water feature that has been described in meetings to date is not working within the current budget framework that we have. So we wanted to talk through tonight some options with the group to get your thoughts on this. One of the alternatives that we wanted to propose, next slide, is to rethink this area of the park somewhat as a promenade or a grand entrance into the park, which would take some of the pressure off a water feature at a smaller scale in the next phase of the project, where it isn't dependent upon to be the signature element at the entry to the park. So what you're looking at here is a series of smaller stepped plazas, which negotiate the 4 to 5 foot grade change that is occurring as you step down into the park, and creating opportunities for either seasonally changing exhibits or elements and or permanent fixtures like public art to help anchor the end. The advantage of this approach, we think, is that with the grade change here, those vertical elements have more visual prominence at the entry to the park that we can achieve with a water feature with the budget that we've got for the project so far. The other advantage is that it allows you to create more of a personality at this end of the park that expresses either the character of Morrisville or a character that changes with the seasons, rather than a water feature, which tends to be more focused on a specific segment of the population. So in terms of serving as a front door and reflecting the inclusive and embracing and inviting nature of the town, we think this would allow for some additional flexibility at this particular location within the park. I can sense the hesitation, and I know that we're going to have a lot of questions and conversation about this. So we do have background information here. We do have some images that we can show of the step plazas, but we did want to reinforce that we have been working carefully with water feature consultants, looking at precedents, looking at budget frameworks, and can kind of walk through that in as little or as much detail as the group would like.
Say something in pretend, but maybe tell us if we don't have the water feature now,
Mhm.
how easy and would it be similar in a later phase?
It's a great question. So I think with the water features we've done in the past, they tend to fall into two categories. There are either the signature dramatic water features that are intended to have a significant visual impact, and there are the smaller water features that tend to work in tandem with other play areas and amenities, if that makes sense. So the challenge with this location, because it is the front door to the park, is achieving the scale and the drama that you're looking for within the budget that we have. So in the future, the thought process is that a water feature could be paired with, if there is an additional town amenity, such as a rec center or a play space or a play plaza, such as the potential future marbles, or an additional area off of Foxglove. It takes some of the pressure off of the water feature to be the signature element for the park. And it actually sets up that feature in pairing with some of these other areas, which we find to be more successful in terms of the use of the interactive water features. Does that make sense so far?
Pairing it with marbles or something sounds really exciting, because I know marbles has that little area right outside, which kind of looks like a river, which makes it attractive. I am more about function than form, and I understand the desire to have art make
Mhm.
this an iconic entrance.
Right.
But would there be any consideration of having maybe art and a playground or something like that? Because more playgrounds, more better. Do we have other playgrounds in this phase?
It's a great question. So in this initial phase, a lot of the play is kind of focused on the lawn, but what we're creating is the opportunities that surround it. So one of the areas that we've identified to date that you've seen in some earlier presentations for opportunities for natural or quiet play is in the Grove area on the west side of the park. So one of the next steps for us as we're working through fine-tuning the topography for the site is to start to identify potential tree save and really understand what we're working around. So what we really see is kind of a naturalistic environment on the west side of the park that incorporates smaller areas of natural play for more quiet settings. As you roll around to the south with the stage, that's the large dramatic element. If you've been out to North Hills or Cary, you'll see kids running around and playing on the large stage element, which allows for larger group settings. And then obviously as we move around to the east side with the cottages, we've got the seating, food and beverage centered component of the park. So in terms of true play areas, we would see them shifted more like a conventional playground to a second phase outside of the main park green that you see here. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Passive play is good, but it's going to be such a large area. I'd be interested in seeing if there's any support of council at some point as we go along to actually have an active playground, some active play space.
Right.
There.
The other aspect to mention, which you're starting to see in a lot more communities, is the active programming within the spaces. So I think Raleigh does a pretty good job of it with Moore Square, for instance, where they've got the larger lawn games and events that are changing play opportunities that exist seasonally and with changing trends throughout the park as well.
Yep, that sounds a lot like a yes and to me, because I think I'd love for us to do that in any case.
Perfect.
Councilmember Darrell, Representative Darrell.
I would just say, without a water feature, for me, it's a non-starter.
Okay.
Because think of a family who has kids. What is the motivation for them to come here as a main draw? If they are not coming, then all these cottages and other areas have to thrive to some kind of an attraction. All that you're saying, Holiday Tree, Menorah, Public Arts is okay, but that doesn't lure the kids to come to that area to do something. And I honestly think we are competing with Boxyard, we are competing with Cary, we are competing with Fenton, which is coming even at IBM, that they're doing it. Too many places that people can go. Then what is it unique that we are able to do? Or phasing out, I would rather phase something else than put the water feature or something which is really attractive to the kids to come and have a sense of family.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents to start.
I want to absolutely agree with everything that Mayor Pro Tem Garamella just said, and also to add that, as you know, as a young mother myself, I remember just how important it is to have places where you can bring your kids where they can have fun for free. And you know, and I disagree, frankly, that a water feature is targeting one segment of the population, because I think that, you know, it's an Instagram world. And, you know, I think that water features are great for wedding pictures, graduation pictures, and, you know, just for hanging out and listening to the sound of the water, meditating. You know, I really hate to lose the water feature. Now, having said all that, I do really like the idea of putting it in front of the Marbles. I'm wondering, has Marbles in any way agreed to that? Because that'd be up to you. Because if not, then I think there needs to be a water feature, and we need to be crystal clear on the fact where it's going. If we need to build it, then we need to build it. So, you know, I would imagine those are things that can get decided closer to the time, but I really don't want to go forward with a plan where we just bag the water feature.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I am in alignment with Mayor Pro Tem Garamella and Councilmember Robati. The water feature for the downtown has been something that I have wanted since we've been talking about the downtown, even before I was on council. I felt like there was no public area really to play. We do have a public pool, but it's different to have a feature in a park. And I heard loud and clear that with the current budget, you know, the water feature is not a feasible option. So that means we have one of two choices. Either we reprioritize the current suite of amenities that we're proposing in this space, or we add more budget to the existing budget. So I'm open to hearing both, but I really feel like water is a connection with nature, and we are a sustainable town, and we want to connect not just with the green space, but the trees and the water. And those three things need to be included in the town green, in my opinion. So thank you.
Councilmember Fender, followed by Councilmember Johnson, please.
Thank you for this presentation. I guess I'm not as hardcore about the water feature, but I am interested in seeing what options there could be in the on the slide before this one. You have rough order of magnitude for a freshwater fountain being 400,000 to 1.6 million. And I guess I'd like to see what the what options could be available for that range, what that would buy for us. Because I understand the desire for a water feature in that I don't know, I lost my train of thought. It would be interesting to see, you know, what would be possible for less money. I don't know. I got my child through his childhood without ever going to a water feature. I will say, you know, one idea came to mind was we did go to, there was at the Museum of Life and Science in Durham, they had, it wasn't a fountain, but it was a water like pool with sailboats that could be remote controlled. I don't know if that's a cheaper option or not. And I did, so I did have one question for the trees. Have you guys given thought on what type of trees would be planted along the promenade? I hope it would be like hardwood trees.
We have not gotten into that level of detail yet, but typically they would be hardwood trees versus evergreen trees.
Okay.
Typically, we'd be looking for more of a statuesque tree that will grow over time, but will maintain a higher lower limb, as Cameron noted, to maintain sight lines, but to provide some formality to the space.
Okay.
Years.
All right. Thank you. That's all I had.
Councilmember Johnson, followed by Councilmember Rao, please.
So yeah, I want to talk about the water feature too, but before I do that, just a couple of comments on the overall plan. It is fabulous. I love the cottages and those half walls that will be seating for looking out on the lawn, plus potential additional seating for the cottage and the tables and chairs up there. That looks fabulous, and the walkways and the ramp kind of area. So all of that looks tremendously I'm really excited about it. So thank you for that. But I too am a little disappointed in the water feature. I think we need to figure that out a little more. And we are a very young community with young families, with young children. And to be able to have some kind of water feature for them to bring them down here, I think is going to be important. And I will also agree that you're right. If we tied it in with marbles, that would be fabulous. But I'm not sure we have a confirmation on marbles. If we do, then maybe we can think about that. But I don't know if the town manager wants to comment on that at all.
I will. We do not have an agreement with marbles at this point. There's a bit of a hold there because of the work that they're doing through the county and through how they're considering some of the options that came out of their hub and spoke study. So the early conversations we've had with them, that if it were possible for them to come here, that it would be, the town would likely be responsible for maintaining the lease for the structure they would be in. We would potentially be responsible for maintenance of the facility, things of that nature. So, we would be working with our partners with Sing to have that constructed, which they would likely do because we'd be a guaranteed lessee for that building. So that's, I think, where we are today. We still have a little ways to go before we would be able to confirm that they're coming. So we did discuss, the idea of the water feature still in the area, but across the intersection. We had some lesser conversations about concerns with, youth safety as far as the proximity there. I think I can jump ahead for a second if that's all right, Fred. So it would be a little bit more time, but there's also an opportunity to consider a water feature if we construct a recreation center in phase 2 of Town Center. So that could potentially be right across the street, almost from where you see with Cottage 1 and 2 there. Could be constructed there. Less concern with accessing that because, again, Foxglove extension is not typically going to be an open street for traffic, so we could certainly control for that a little bit better. It would be a drawing card for the recreation center with an outside amenity, but again, recognize that would slow the process for a water feature, but that's some of the conversation we've had. We fully recognize the interest. We have heard you through this conversation. We are certainly not ignoring that, but we're also trying to be very cognizant of listening to the Clearscapes team who have done some of this and have, as you mentioned, with the exception of perhaps the water, I mean, the plan is amazing, my humble opinion. So they're taking us to a place that I think is going to be great. So in talking with them, that concept of a promenade has a lot of attractiveness here. I hear what you're saying about a feature to draw people. Again, I think that's one of the things that Mary has really helped us with, is not thinking about this as, you know, a town center, but thinking about it as a space that's going to be programmed and used, and how are we going to do that, and what are the variety of different things that we're going to do to draw people to this area. So I think all of that goes into this discussion.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And then I actually have one question too, just so I understand. When you were talking about this area where the water feature was going to be, and instead would have these, what do we call them again? These, like
Some step plazas or terraces.
plazas. Thank you. I couldn't, you're right. Is that because of the topography right there? Is that why, and that makes it more difficult for a water feature right there too? Did I hear that?
So there are a couple things in play here. This is a very visually prominent location in the park. It's in many ways the front door to the park, but it is sloping down about 5 feet from the intersection down to where the ellipse starts. So working within the budget parameters of the budget framework for the fountain, we're competing against a descending topography to create more of a visual element up at the intersection level. Does that make sense?
Okay, yes,
So
it
that's
does.
kind of the challenge with the visual impact.
And so that's important to weigh in here. I thank you for that. I wanted to make sure I understood that, because that is important to me there as well. And I want a water feature too somehow.
Right. I agree, and I think we hear you loud and clear. And this is not about eliminating a water feature. It's about testing all of your expectations and aspirations and assumptions, and really making sure we're drilling down and analyzing it in an accurate way to understand, can we create the right experience in this particular location? Or does the park just want to have the water feature in a different spot? And I think that's what the conversation tonight is about.
And so in this whole concept we see in front of us, there wasn't another place to incorporate a water feature, like down in behind the porch area? Could that be a more appropriate place?
It's a great question. Maybe if we want to jump back to the plan to talk through it a little bit. So a lot of this is with how the park is programmed and how the flow and the use works. So from our perspective, the lawn to us is kind of your living room. That's your signature moment. The reason it's circular is it's a symbol of inclusivity. It's what brings together those large groups of people. It's going to be a bright, sunny space, right? Because we'll have trees around the perimeter to provide shade to the west and the east and south. But the lawn itself is a large, sunny, happy place that's intended to bring a lot of people together. As you look at the west side with the pockets, that's more that natural element with the potential tree save. And thinking about a water feature in there, it can be done. It's just a very different type of attraction, because you're talking about leaf material and other natural material that get into the water feature and impact the performance. To the right, on the east side, we typically don't mix water features and food and beverage. They tend not to go well together. So to your point, it kind of leaves the south. And the area of the porch is intended to be that kind of smaller, raised plinth that draws attention to itself with the stage structure overhead. And what we're calling the grove down behind is really intended to bring the treescape from the pockets around to the backside. And that's doing a couple things. That's providing some buffer from the road for when you have events. And it's also recognizing that we have the education garden in the back of house there. So locating a water feature back in that area can certainly be done. It's been done to some extent even at North Hills with the water feature that surrounds the stage. But what you find is, from a programming perspective, that they both can't operate at the same time. So that would be part of the logic of wanting to shift it further to the east. And like we said, that's the challenge, is you're projecting ahead and being aspirational that you will have a rec center, or you will have marbles, or we will have a play plaza in a future phase. So that does become the challenge, is that trade-off acceptable, or do we need to look at it in phase one? And that's where we've got some of the numbers and the things to kind of run through with you, so you have a picture of what works within the budget framework. Would that be helpful to jump to?
Yeah, and very helpful. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And did I Cut anyone else off for their comments?
We need to recognize Councilmember Rao, and then
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem had a couple more comments on where we're at.
Most of, sorry, most of my points have been made. I think that I really think water feature is important, so I'd like to see quite often. What I've noticed is just parks I've been going to recently, been going a lot to Boxyard, Frontier, RTP, been going to Cary, kind of seeing momentum there. What I'm seeing is just lots of activities, lots of families coming together, young families, especially the downtown park of Cary. That's a huge investment, plus. But just the park, the activities that people can do, the fact that it's close to the library, a lot of walkability, and very family friendly compared to like even, I know you mentioned Moore Square, but when I go to downtown Raleigh, it's much more just, you might have the stuff in Moore Square, but not as much activities
Right.
for the young families, so it's much more merchant oriented with large high rises and then kind of nothing too much there too. So I think whatever can, I really like the plan. I just think we have to figure out whatever we can put in there that's very unique that can bring these people, these families in, which I think, because like Mayor Pro Tem said, it's always been my concern. There's so many other things out there. What can we do that's really unique, that really differentiates us?
So now we're going to have a quick second round before we move on. So I look at the promenade, and it's the entrance. We have the sign over by the roundabout, but the promenade is really our entrance. So if that could be iconic in some way, and we keep on saying water feature. And in my mind, when I hear water feature, I'm thinking like a water spray ground. So I think that's what we were kind of choosing. And I think that is maybe not appropriate in this space. But I think a smallish fountain in the northernmost ellipse there of those three would be an attractive, iconic entrance area. Like I think about the library right across the street there, and we have a nice sculpture, it's some art, but it's not that interesting that people are gonna go ahead and take pictures with it. But if it was a fountain, for example, people would. Fountains are just a lot more interesting. It has the moving water, meditative qualities and things like that. So if there's an opportunity to do something like that, which is, I hope, less expensive, and hold the spray ground for a more appropriate place that fits into the rest of the item, which I don't think is phase 1A right here. I would love to see in the bottom ellipse there maybe a little playground for kids or a more activated area. Rather than just having three sculptures with look interesting but people walk past, I'd like that to be an area that actually gets used. And having a fountain there with some seating around it, like they have in Cary, but ours would be a lot smaller. And then maybe some other activities in those other two. 3 is a good number. You can do something really creative in that space. So those are just my thoughts about what you've shared with me. I'm much more in favor of waiting for the full spray ground into a different space. I think this is going to be active enough. Everything else that we have going on. So Mayor Pro Tem Garamella.
I got to start with saying the design looks good. Okay, I'm not basically commenting on that area at all because the cottage is an attraction that can really work well. And I understand from the questions about the grading at the promenade, but I think you guys can still do some work around the restroom areas, I feel, where you don't need a real estate of a restroom to be in the middle of a cottage. You can basically have it one side of to be a water feature and the back of it as a restroom. You don't need, there are 100 ways that you can do it. Last night I was at Reston Town Center, and if you've been in that area, they have exactly this area where they have a waterfall feature and the step downs that they come. It's pretty attractive. But that's where people get drawn into. So there are a lot of other ways, while you're waiting for a splash pad area, something has to be put in this area to draw people, period. Otherwise, I agree with the mayor, sculptures, everything is good. It doesn't attract people to come. And my fear is I want all the cottages there to thrive and, not be empty and people are not having businesses. I want each and every business there to thrive. That's much as I can.
Does anyone have, Councilmember Scroggins Johnson?
So I'd like to understand the different options as well, as Councilmember Fender mentioned. It's very important to me that we have some water in this design, in this phase. It's nice to talk about marbles, potentially. It's nice to talk about phase 2, potentially. But I am concerned that it's going to be a long time until our phase 2 due to other pressing priorities with the town. So what can we do, and where it's placed are something that we can consider. I do like Mayor Pro Tem sorry, Satish, because the placement, if you have a restroom, you have a water supply. So there's maybe some natural complementary, budget alignment items that you could consider with that, because you do have water to that location, and the placement of it offset a little bit with the restrooms, maybe offset, could allow for a win-win. We could have some sort of water interactive, and frankly, having some water nearby to a restroom is a really good idea, especially with small families, small children. So that's what I'm thinking now, and I'm looking forward to hearing more options. Thank you.
Really good discussion, lots of things shared. I'm sure you heard a lot. I'm not sure what you're going to do with it, but I'll keep the presentation moving.
Okay.
Unless you want to react to anything you've heard.
No, I think, so a question for the group to think about, and I think that the feedback's been really helpful. We have been focused more on an interactive water feature based on the discussions that have gotten us to this point. So we do have some background information that we can share with order of magnitude cost. But to make sure we're understanding clearly, it sounds like there may be some interest from the group in looking more at a decorative water feature in this first portion than an interactive, at least from a couple of members. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think you correctly heard that we definitely want water in the first phase,
Right.
and the formation, I think, might depend on what you come back
Okay.
by telling us about these numbers.
Sure.
I think that might help us inform that decision.
Let's kick to the end. So I think as a quick view, this is taken from the top of the park looking down. So hopefully this provides some sense of understanding that you're kind of looking down into the park. This indicates some of the step topography that we're looking at. But with that, let's jump to. We need the extra slides, yes.
I have a flash drive. We can use.
Let's flash drive work over here.
Yeah, if you have one, yes, perfect. That should work. Right.
Oh, it's up to you. Use this if you prefer. Let me send. Sorry, I couldn't use a little bit out of the hard drive. So we'll. Interesting. I think I broke it.
you want me to plug in?
So we'll touch base on this briefly. These were examples. We had talked about the potential for using some stepped plazas to address the topography. So these are some various examples in other municipalities of how they create smaller or unique spaces that are all linked through vertical stepping. Next slide. These were some examples of entry pathways into spaces that integrate public art and larger elements. And let's touch base on the fountains or the water features, since that's been the topic of discussion. Based on the conversation to date, we have talked about two types of fountains. One is a freshwater fountain or wasted water fountain, which means that you're not treating, collecting, and recirculating the water through the water feature. The second is a recirculating feature, and based on the conversations we've had to date, the preference was more for a freshwater feature where you're not dealing with chemical treatment of water over time. Working from that, as a rough order of magnitude budget, the pro forma budget is about $400,000, which is on the low end for features of this type. As you can see in the range, it's up over $1.5 million when we get to the larger, more dramatic features. The cost depends on the type of water, whether we're looking at misters or fog versus jets. It depends obviously on the quantity of nozzles, and it depends on the overall scale and degree of complexity with the system. Next slide, please. So this is a quick overview of the general types of water that can be delivered within some of these freshwater systems. Misters on the left is more of that atmospheric experience. One of the advantages of this type of system is it's the lowest water usage. You can see we're at 0.25 gallons per minute with that type of system. So when you're considering a freshwater or a wasted water system, it means you're running less water through the system. This is also one of the more cost-effective options. Fog is in between. It's somewhere between misters and conventional jets. It requires some additional equipment, but again, it's also low water usage. And then finally, jets. From the meetings we've had to date, we believe this is what you were really looking for, was big water shooters. And as you can see from here, the water usage goes up quite a bit, up to 5 gallons of water per nozzle. So with a conventional feature that might have 40 nozzles in it, it's quite a bit of water per hour that's running through the system. Okay, next slide, please. Some of the key features that help make water features as interactive and engaging as they are obviously lighting. Conventional in-grade lighting would be lighting that is not tied to the nozzles themselves, but is built into the surrounding hardscape. And then we obviously have nozzle lighting, which is integrated in with the individual nozzles. And then additionally, programming. So what we have here is 3 rough order of magnitude examples to kind of demonstrate what the associated cost is for different types of systems. So this is an example of a misting fountain. This is located in Memphis. And what you'll see in the upper 2 images are in-ground lights, which are not tied to specific nozzles, and a misting type system for the park. And this is running in the $400,000 range. Okay, next slide. This is just an overall view of the surrounding site for context. And this is an overall sense of scale of that feature. So you can see this is a relatively large footprint for relatively low cost as it's utilizing that misting system. This is an example of an in-between. This is at 5 Points Plaza in Charlotte, if any of you are familiar with it. So this is a combination of smaller jets and misters. It does feature lighting that's integrated in with the nozzles. And this is an example of roughly $500,000 to $750,000 fountain. Okay. Sense of scale here, you can see it's a much smaller footprint. This is roughly a 25-foot square area. This is another similar example. We're putting this in because this is an integration of a water landscape with public art. The intent here is to provide some of the visual drama through the public art, but to balance that by creating the experiential component with the water. This again is roughly a $500,000 to a $750,000 water feature. That does not include the cost of the earth or the public art, but it gives you an overall sense of scale on the next slide. This is that image that you can see. Okay. And then finally, this would be an example of a conventional jet system. So this particular example is in Indianapolis, and this is close to $1 million system with jets with integrated lighting within the jets. Okay. This we put in to help provide a sense of scale so you understand how much area we have to work with. So option A in the middle was the largest example. Option B1 was that intermediate example. And you can see on the left at scale roughly the area we have to work with if we were considering a water feature in this northern quadrant of the park.
And I'd like to add, there's a little bit of a difference in density as well between option A and option B1. B1 has a lot more density, which is why it's a little bit smaller. Option A is much more spread out between the nozzles. So it has a different effect.
And to be clear, with any of these examples, our intent is not to suggest that we think any of these is the right answer, but to kind of roughly demonstrate at scale what you can buy with different budget tiers. Next slide, please. This is a little bit of background information just to potentially help inform any of your thought process. So with the freshwater system, which is where I believe the group has been landing to date, one of the advantages is you're not chemically treating water, you're not dealing with chemical storage. So from an environmental perspective, there is a sustainability aspect to that. Conversely, the water is wasted. Whatever we end up doing with water features, we would want to collect to some extent to allow for irrigation or use elsewhere. But then you're into the difference between the nozzle systems versus the misters and the foggers in terms of how much water you're running through that system on an hourly or daily basis. And then finally, these were some other examples that we had looked at, ways of creatively integrating a water element with some public art, sculpture, or other aspects to provide more of a compelling visual element and to effectively grow the scale or visual impact of the environment with less water usage. Lighting we talked about a little bit. Some of this is to bring up with a water feature if we're looking at it as a visual element. There is obviously the daytime element. In some ways, they're more dramatic at night. And then these are various examples of playing with the hardscape to make that an element of the water feature. So that's a very quick, very high overview, but hopefully that kind of helps set some tiers for discussion as to what the group would like to consider.
Those extra slides were very helpful. I enjoyed each and every one of them. Councilmember Fender, followed by Councilmember Rabati, please.
Can you go back to that slide where it compared the AB1 to, yeah, that one.
Mm-hmm.
So would you be able to use the B1 design with a combination of what you guys would call it, the tiered smaller plazas?
Sure. In other words, for instance, if we subdivided the space into a series of smaller step plazas to introduce the water feature into one of them.
So we would still have a water feature that would be smaller, but then still cover that space. And I wonder if that would be an option that would be acceptable to the other council members.
And I'm sorry, you said yes? You could do that in one of those 3
Yes.
subspaces? Okay, great. We'll hear from everybody, and I'll make a note that we can check on that. Councilmember Rabati, followed by Councilmember Johnson, please.
These are a lot harder to price because they're bespoke or one-off. So if there's interest in this, this is something that we would look at. But obviously, what you're starting to see is these are mostly misting examples, which is a lower cost water feature and lower water use. But rather than being a ground-mounted system that has less of that vertical prominence visual impact, by integrating it with the art, you're trying to create more of a dramatic element. I don't want to suggest they're cheaper. It is a smaller water feature. So the water feature, the water element itself is less costly because it's less substantial, but you're offsetting it by the cost of whatever we're building to put into it. Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson, followed by myself.
So I echo what Councilmember Fender and Councilmember Robati just said. I like this idea of maybe these plazas, maybe using one of them for some kind of a water feature, and then not giving up on a whole splash pad idea, but maybe that goes to another location in the town center. But I would have asked you to put this slide up too. This especially the middle structure, it's kind of high, I guess. I don't know if that's to scale for what we want, but something like that would be, any of those, quite frankly, would be fabulous. So I think we found a way to maybe, we haven't heard from everybody, get there with some kind of a water feature here.
Which is nice. Nice to hear that. So I really like this slide. So I would think I'd like to see something like this. This seems like a little less of a play area. This could be an iconic entry thing. And I see the shapes. I see the O, maybe an M as the iconic entry to our park with mist coming off it in a grassy area because we're about grass. And then maybe the bottom one is a full splash pad as Councilmember Fender. So I'm building off everybody here. And I think that would meet my need to have a play area in the early parts. But I think you also had a slide earlier showing like a tree and a menorah. So how would those be integrated would be my question.
So I think what we were starting to see this north end of the park as wanting to be, at least from our perspective, or having the potential to be from our perspective, was a way to express what's important to you as a community. So we know that you do the Christmas tree and the menorah now, and some of those locations may change over time. And this, right at the front door of the park, to us seemed a great opportunity to put in some of those changing seasonal elements that always bring something new and different to the park, rather than having the same thing throughout the course of the year. But it is potentially viable that we combine sort of this idea with a more permanent element where you're creating some continuity throughout the use of the plazas, but also providing opportunity for unique programming throughout the course of the year.
Mayor Pro Tem Garamella?
I think what you just said triggered me something too. The water feature will not be a year-round thing anyway, we know that. But it has to be something, the area has to be used throughout the year. Could it be something, a combination where you put the Christmas tree and ice rink, you know, for 2 months or something like that, that can be on top of it, and then back again during summer and spring, the water is back. So that it is year-round, something is going on there. That will really pull a lot of people here, because every time Raleigh or puts ice skating, it draws a lot of people there. I don't know what it takes, beyond my grade to understand, but keep it robust enough that it can be used for multi-use throughout the year that way.
If the ice skating is of interest, we have looked at that in several parks before. It's typically done in one of two ways. It's either a temporary installation that's brought in, or it's integrated with the water feature. There are examples of that. There's obviously some cost associated with providing that type of amenity, and what it will start to do is drive the size of what we do with the tiers. It may be we end up with one larger tier, maybe a couple, by the time we're able to allocate enough space for ice skate travel around the extended rink.
And to be honest, like what Vicky said early on, this is our only chance to have this right, and we either have all hands on deck, and might be the cost goes up, but it's worth well spent, because I want people to come here all the time. So that's the reason we all are cautious to see how it pans out, and it's a reality, and it's a good problem to have as to what to have it. So just putting a food for thought.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, please.
So we are really putting you through the paces here. So it sounds to me from the other council members' feedback is that something that's artistically beautiful, that integrates some misting. It is January and very cold right now, but in the warmer months, it is so hot. To have misting or some sort of water relief in a park setting is just awesome. So I do like the artistic mister, M-I-S-T-E-R, misting apparatus. That does seem like a good compromise. It also gives us some kind of showcase kind of thing. But during the winter, I do like the idea of having an activity spot, such as an ice rink, so that we can, the misters are not working, but yet there's a draw for people to come and experience and play and interact, because we want this to be highly engaging for folks. So those different tiers, if there was one larger one, so that we could program some of that space with some activity year-round, that would be very helpful with the misters as well. So I guess I'm seeing a compromise, that it's not all one use, that there is a mixed use, but there might be a emphasis on a larger area for multiple uses. Thank you.
So everyone's had an opportunity to weigh in once. I see a couple of people want to weigh in again. So we're on our second round. Councilmember Body, followed by Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Johnson, followed by myself.
So I can't even remember who said it anymore. When Mayor Pro Tem Garamella talked about ice skating, and I think it was you, Fred, and you said you could bring in a temporary rink. I mean, could you put a temporary rink in the lawn?
That is an interesting and thought-provoking question. So the lawn is at a gentle slope. We would have to do a little digging on that.
Okay.
But for instance, Raleigh brings in a temporary rink. Fenton, I haven't been to the Fenton.
They have some kind of ice rink too.
I believe theirs is temporary too.
Yeah. Okay, so the slope may or may not accommodate it.
We need to do a little check.
Okay, because it just occurred to me, this area that we're talking about with these 3 plazas and the topography there, I'm not sure you're going to get a big ice skating rink, or maybe you will. But if it's you bring in a temporary rink, well, maybe we can set it up somewhere else. So, I don't know. Okay, more to that could come in another conversation.
So we were very much thinking alike when I heard about the challenges of the ice skating rink being permanently placed in the area that might kind of provide challenges there. I thought, where else could we put it? And the lawn just jumped out at me. But we have a number of other parks. So if that's something we want to program, it doesn't have to be part of this. But I would also add that right in front of our stage can be flat and still have visibility. So that would be a place where if we're going to do any kind of engineering, if that's allowed to be flat, that might be a good place to have something like that. That reminds me of Cocoa Booth. They have the slope, but then they have the flat area. So that would be a thought for that. While we're on the slide, I'd like to echo what I heard from Councilmember Rabati. At first, when we were talking about the 3 ellipses up front, I was like, okay, like a sculpture like in front of the library, not that interesting. These are very interesting. I see these as something like over at the Museum of Art. That's a very interesting thing, and I think that is, it's passive, but it's nice. It's iconic. I think we all want something iconic in the town. So coming up with something like this, a combination of everything that you've heard from us, just make that magic happen, would you? I mean, how hard could that be? And like I said, I'll recognize Councilmember Fender, and then I do also want to ask the question of the rest of us. We're talking about different things, but we'd be very interested in B1 being one of these 3 ellipses with the jets, like an active play area. So that's what I'm going to ask as we close this section out. Councilmember Fender.
Just real fast, I wanted to add about the ice skating rink. At Carey's new park, they have a tiny ice skating rink that looks like it's just for kids. So that, and then they have, it looked like they had an place where the kids could get ice skates. So that it wouldn't need to be, if that's the route we ended up going, it wouldn't need to be a big space. It could be one of those tiered little plazas and still work in a small space.
That's it. I was wondering if Parks and Rec Director Fawcett would like to just add anything. I see you're in the back. Any thoughts about our discussion so far and what, because you're the person who's been really working on the programming of this, so if you're interested, I wanted to give you that opportunity.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The conversation's been very informative, so I really value all of your comments this evening. We are in lots of conversations with Clearscape and with seeing the programming aspect is something that comes, but design does lead to those opportunities. So I'm inspired by what I've heard tonight, and we'll come together and draw in engineering and public works and have some more in-depth conversations. So thank y'all for providing your feedback. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Mayor Pro Tem Garamilla?
Mary, I think fabulous job. It's still a way to go. But something that came to my mind with this area, I just want to be cognizant of the pets. If we have like a pet drinking station, kind of areas, that would be always good because people can get their dogs. It's very hot in the summer, and that will be good. And some misters, so that when they go, at least not for even for the regular people.
Yeah, great comment. Thank you. Any others?
I don't see any others at this time. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and for steering us towards programming with the end in mind. Yeah. I think that's really important.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk with y'all and to be a part of this opportunity.
Okay, great. So I don't see any other questions right now, but Councilmember Fender brought up a pretty solid point. I thought that B1 could probably fit into one of the 3 ellipses with the jets and active play area. And what would be the cost of that one? Was that the 500 to $750,000?
The smaller jet area.
Yeah, the B1.
That particular example was 500 to $500,000 to $750,000.
Because this is what I was imagining as being part of the splash pad. So I would be interested in having this in the first part, if possible, with the mister way up front as iconic. Would anyone else like to react to Councilmember Fender's idea that this could really be one of the early elements, or have any other thoughts? Councilmember Rabati? Okay. I think we're good. You bring us home, or is there lots more?
No.
Putting it back to you.
You've given us plenty to think about.
Okay.
Mary's comments. So
Okay.
I guess the one obvious question would be, with everything that we're talking about, we as a team have been working very hard to work within the budget framework set up in the performa. And what I'm hearing is, for the right idea, there can be some flexibility in that to achieve what you're looking to achieve. Is that a fair statement?
Can we give them head nods on that statement? I think, as Councilmember Garamella said, this is our one chance to do this right, and I think we might be willing to go ahead and up the budget a little bit, although there's lots of other elements coming. We're making a soft commitment right now to be willing to invest more than the budget at this time. Everyone's getting kind of quiet, but I think there's general support on that. Okay? Does that get you what you need, sir?
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. I know a lot of hard work came into this. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to do public address in the break. Is that okay? Because we are still on schedule for right now. At this time, Acting Town Clerk Hudson will now present any public comments received.
Earlier this afternoon, we did receive one emailed public comment. That individual did not include an address, but they did express concern over empty building space, speeding, and affordable housing. No one has signed up for a public address at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. So you'll be sending us that email, though. If you already haven't, I haven't had a chance to check my email today.
I will get it sent to you.
Okay, thank you very much. We give our residents and stakeholders the opportunity, even if you haven't signed up, to spend 3 minutes at the microphone on any subject of your choosing. So at this time, if you'd like to do that, let me know by standing up. Okay, so we're finished with public address. God bless you. At this time, we're scheduled for a break. It's 7:33 right now. Let's please reconvene at 7:45. Bless you. Mr. Zudema? Ready to reconvene, sir? Okay. Okay, we're coming back from our break at this time. We're at item 11 right now, public hearings. There are 3 public hearing items on this evening's agenda. A continuation of a public hearing related to the Town Center Phase 1 Main Street Plan Development Rezoning, a proposed master sign plan for the Spark development, and we have removed the proposed major amendment for the Park West Village. So Chris Lawson, Planning Manager, will facilitate the first item. Mr. Lawson.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. You last heard this item on November 28th, and I only really have one update for you, which is a discussion that was around parking in the Jeremiah Street area and then a neighborhood directly behind Jeremiah. Essentially, Jeremiah is a public street, and there's parallel parking that is also public and available for the public to use. Don't believe there's any time restrictions right now on that. However, in the neighborhood behind Jeremiah Street, it's called Church Street Towns, the roads there are also public, but the parking that is within the neighborhood is actually owned and maintained by the HOA. So it is for the residents of that neighborhood. So since the last meeting, the HOA has actually moved some signage around to clarify what they maintain and own and what they do not. So that's my update as far as that parking. I don't have any other updates. Your public hearing is still open, and then you are scheduled to vote this evening.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for staff before we continue the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to recognize acting town clerk to provide any public hearing comments received, and then recognize anyone signed up to provide in-person comments.
No one was signed up to provide public hearing comments on this item.
Okay, and none were received via email? Okay, I understand there might be one or more people in the audience right now who would like to make a comment during this public hearing. Now would be the time to go ahead and approach the microphone to make those comments, please. If you could please state your name and residential address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak on this subject.
Thank you, Council, for giving me the opportunity to speak about it. So my name is Kamal Pera.
Come much closer to the microphone.
My name is Kamal Pera, and I live at 744 New State Way, Morrisville. My question regarding this development is, I think we are doing a development which I saw the map, but then this map doesn't have a legend. So I had a problem, real problem in understanding this map, that what is the change and what is being done here. So, but I do have a question that when we develop this, how we are going to take care of traffic on Church Street between that Jeremy Street and what is that, Carpenter's Road, Morrisville Carpenter. Because that street is very small. It's like still 2-lane, and I don't see there is any plan that how we are going to increase it. Number two, I have an interest on Scoggins Avenue. Now, Scoggins Avenue has become something like very narrow lane in between, and I don't see anything which is being done on that side. How we are going to come out, like it's an emergency or any, what we call as, anything which happens in that area, it's not enough space to come out like on that street. It's so small. So is there any proposal for addressing these two along with other changes? That's my comments or questions here.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your input. So I know during public address, we don't do give and take. As it is a public hearing that we might be closing soon, would staff like to respond to any concerns we just heard? I know for the Scoggins emergency response items, I know that we've brought fire trucks down into that space as we had some live training down there. So, but if staff would like to address the other.
Yeah, I'll start with Scoggins. The council will actually have an item sometime in the future that will abandon part of Scoggins to help facilitate the development of phase 1. And then with future phases, we anticipate that Scoggins will be redesigned, if not entirely, pretty significantly. But with this current phase, the only thing that will happen with Scoggins, part of it will be abandoned, and then there will be a temporary turnaround added, you know, if EMS or fire requires one. I believe the other road was Church Street. So a few things going on with Church Street. For a separate project for the TOD, we're doing the Church Street study right now, and I believe this portion is included in that study. And then secondly, any kind of turning and movements will be handled by TIAs as the future phases develop.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions about anything before we entertain closing the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor of closing the public hearing on this item, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries 7-0 unanimously. Any other questions for staff or anything before we entertain the motion that is at our seats to approve this item?
No, but I'd love to make this motion.
Don't see any, but I will recognize Councilmember Johnson to make a motion.
Thank you. I find the proposed zoning map amendment to be consistent with the town of Morrisville's comprehensive plan for the following reasons. A, the requested zoning map amendment initiates the implementation of the town center sub-area plan as established by the adopted 2021 land use plan. B, the requested zoning map amendment implements the 2021 land use plan key action item 24, incorporating a central public gathering space into future town center development. And I hereby make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-359-0 of the Morrisville Town Council approving a Main Street Plan Development rezoning for Town Center Phase 1, approximately 16 acres of property located northeast of the intersection of Town Hall Drive and Carolina Street.
And if I could just, I was trying to get right in front of that. Our thing here says approve with conditions. Is that important to say as part of this motion? I'm asking staff.
And not necessarily, but there are certain conditions on this, so it may be best to include that.
Look at the town attorney, should we?
Yes, if there are conditions that are imposed on the approval, they should be noted. It should be approval with conditions proposed by staff.
Can we just reread that last paragraph then? Would that be okay? Would you mind doing that?
Okay, so I hereby make a motion to approve with conditions. I'm sorry, I left that out. I did not say those words, did I? Apologize. And I hereby make a motion to approve with conditions ordinance 2023-359-0 of the Morrisville Town Council approving a Main Street Plan Development rezoning for Town Center Phase 1, approximately 16 acres of property located northeast of the intersection of Town Hall Drive and Carolina Street.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously 7-0. Thank you very much for staff.
you.
Lots of work went into that. Okay. Okay, at this time, I will recognize Elliot Ward, Planning Manager, who will facilitate the next public hearing. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Cawley. Good evening, Council. Can everyone hear me okay? It's been a while since I've worn a mask up here. All right. So tonight I'll be presenting item 2023-435-0. It's a proposed master sign plan for the Spark development. This is the aerial of the Spark Phase 1 site. Consists of approximately 37 acres and is identified by Wake County PIN 0756-33-0254. It's commonly known as 4877 McCrimmon Parkway. The applicant is Trinity Capital Advisors. Here's the overall proposed quantities for each sign type. These are the proposed quantities for Phase 1, but just understand that these totals will increase as future phases are developed. The applicant is proposing 2 of these, what they're calling Type A ground signs. These are comparable to the town's Type A monument signs in Section 5.16 of the UDO. The town typically permits 32 square feet per sign face for a monument sign. The applicant is requesting 66 square feet for their signs. It's a good time to remind council and those listening that the master sign plan allows the applicant to propose their own dimensional standards, types, and quantities. Should the master sign plan get approved, future sign permit applications for Spark would be reviewed against this plan and not the standards in the UDO. Trinity Capital is proposing one of these Type B ground signs. I included the dimensional standards for the town's Type B signs of 16 square feet sign face and 7-foot height maximum. However, this is more comparable to kind of a mix between our Type A and Type B. The applicant is proposing a sign face of 41 square feet and a height of 10 feet 3 inches. Applicant is proposing 2 of these Type C, what they're calling wayfinding signs. Again, these are somewhat of a mix of Type A, town's Type A and B. They'll be internally illuminated with translucent colored acrylic and incorporate a bench for seating. They are proposing a height of 8 feet 6 inches and a sign face of 38 square feet. They're also proposing 2 of the Type D ground signs. These have a max height of 7 feet and 16 square feet of sign face. Trinity Capital is also proposing some building identification and wayfinding signs. All of these are actually less than the comparable dimensional standards in the UDO. Specifically, they're proposing 5 of their type E building signs, 6 type F secondary signs, 5 of the type G vehicular wayfinding signs, and then 3 of the type H pedestrian wayfinding signs. They've provided some notes with the plan as well. Future signage for each type will be erected at the included locations here. The amendments to the sign plan will be reviewed and approved by town staff through the minor modification process. The dimensions of each sign type will not exceed what's proposed in this plan. Next, if it's necessary to adjust any of those sign locations that were shown on slide 3, then the quantities will not increase, and those changes will again be handled through the minor modification process with town staff. Ground signs will not interfere with sight triangles at intersections. The lights on the illuminated signs will not change color, intensity, or flash in any way. The color temperature used for the LED lights will be 6500K. This was described at the December 14th PZB meeting as comparable to daylight and more of a cool lighting. And then lastly, wall signs were not included in this plan. Once tenants are confirmed, all the wall signs will follow the typical sign permit process and adhere to the requirements in UDO section 5.16. Staff recommends approval of the master sign plan for the following reasons. The application complies with the stated purpose of regulation in UDO section 5.16.1a. The request does not include any prohibited signs as identified in UDO sections 5.16.2 D, E, and F. The application does not include any temporary signage. The application is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the application does not conflict with any other provisions of the UDO or Code of Ordinances. As I mentioned at the December 14th, 2023 meeting, the PZB recommended approval of the Spark Master Sign Plan by a vote of 5-0. And here is the ordinance language for council's motion. Council is asked to open a public hearing this evening, and action on this item is slated for the following council meeting on February 13th. And that's all I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. We also have a representative for Trinity Capital here as well if you have any questions for them.
I'd like to recognize Councilmember Ravati, please.
What would happen if these signs are almost twice as, the front signs are almost twice as large as the ones that are currently specified in the UDO, isn't that correct?
Correct.
So what are the implications of approving signs this large in terms of future permits that might
Outside of the development site itself?
outside of this development by someone else? Is this setting a new precedent for different signage? I don't mind these signs, but I'm just saying I don't necessarily want to lock this up into 66 feet of sign in front of every building.
Right, yeah, so this is not setting any precedent. The UDO standards will remain as they are. So this is specific to the Spark development site. If another development is 25 acres or more, 400,000 square feet of building space or more, they'd have to come in with their own sign plan, propose their own dimensions. So it will not carry over. Look at each site as an individual site.
And it wouldn't open us up to any type of liability potentially if like this was approved and another site wasn't because we didn't find those signs to be acceptable or anything like that. Just trying to anticipate every potential issue that could come out of such a huge departure from the UDO.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you remember, we approved the Wake Tech sign plan last year. Their monument signs exceeded more so than these in certain circumstances. I don't think I mean, we have legal representation here, but I don't think I don't think we have to worry about liability in the sense that it is considered discretionary. It's a legislative decision. It's at, council's discretion to decide for each site itself.
Even having said that, I would like to recognize the town attorney, Larry Jones, at this time.
Yeah, I don't see this as a liability issue. You have the discretion to consider applications as they come in based on the parameters of that project in particular. So this wouldn't be a liability issue from that standpoint.
And I would add maybe Discovery across the street would probably be coming with a science plan at some point too.
Yeah, they would, if they choose to submit, they would be permitted. Yeah,
So they'd go through the same process.
correct. Yep.
And TOD also are the ones that come to mind, right?
TOD, yep.
Okay. Any other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay, I would declare the public hearing open at this time. Town Clerk, is there anyone signed up or have we received any emails on this item, please?
No email comments were submitted and no one has signed up to speak on this public hearing.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close this public hearing if that's the will of the council.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion and a second to close this public hearing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that public hearing is closed. Does anyone have any questions for staff in advance of our action, proposed action on February 13th? Okay, sounds like we're in good shape. Thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you.
As noted earlier, we are skipping 11C, Charlie, because the applicant pulled that item. We are now at number 12, new items. There is one new item on this evening's agenda, a capital project ordinance amendment and resolution amending the town center pre-development agreement. Brandon Zudema, town manager, will facilitate the item. Town manager.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Your third discussion about the town center tonight. That's definitely a sign that progress is being made. So where is So we are here tonight with a request. You will recall that you previously approved back in May of 23 a pre-development agreement that would fund the pre-development work for the calendar year 23 with the expectation that you would receive the development agreement in January of this year. So we are instead here tonight to ask for an amendment to that to essentially fund all of the anticipated pre-development work given the delay in the development agreement. As you can see on your screen, you originally authorized an amount not to exceed $900,000. That was based on pre-development work totaling $840,000, and we agreed with Singh on a 7% management fee for the pre-development work. That would be $60,000. There's some very minor rounding there for simplicity. Again, this was intended to cover the calendar year 23 work. And at that point, it was acknowledged or recognized that there was still about $335,000 that would be worth of work that would be conducted in calendar year 24. So that's where we started at. This is just a reminder of that work that we described to you, the base services, the town green, joint tasks, and other related pre-development work. Again, calendar year 23 totaling the 840. And then the total being $1,174,000. So that grabs that other $335,000 that we mentioned. So there have been some adjustments to pre-development costs since you saw that chart in May. Again, the original pre-development fee total was estimated at $1.174 million. We have added some additional Kimley Horn work related to both traffic and parking, as well as survey work. That's respectively $60,000 and $25,000. Additional clearscapes design work for the town green. We're at $211,000 more than was estimated, as you can see from the number of times they've come back and the level of detail they've been working on and the 3D renderings and the other work. We spent a lot of time with them. And so, of course, that time costs money to make sure that we get this done right for you and, more importantly, for the community. Pre-construction services to secure a pre-construction cost estimate. We had talked with you that Singh has agreed to a contract with a construction company to do a pre-construction estimate. That's what we'll bring to you ideally in April, and that'll be the sort of pre-GMP, the pre-guaranteed maximum price that will be included in the development agreement for the actual construction of this project. And that number is also important because it's what we report to the LGC, the Local Government Commission, so that they will indicate this is a viable project and would support that, and before we would bring it back to you for potential approval. So the last thing there is some negotiated items. We sat down and talked through some things and got some minor items adjusted for a $21,000 credit. So all told, we went from 1,174 to $1,495,000 in a revised pre-development fee. So that's an additional 321 on top of the 335 that we anticipated back in May. So just to clearly put that on a page, original 335, the additional is 321. So that's $656,000. Again, still applicable is the 7% management fee, $44,000. Again, just a reminder, some minor rounding there. So the total request tonight is for $702,000 to cover the remainder of the pre-development work for this project. And I will say these are all very high estimates in terms of it wouldn't be worse than this sort of approach. So being conservative in that sense that we expect it to come in lower than this, but want to make sure we share what it could be with you, and that'll get worked out as the work occurs. So funding options, we're recommending that the funding of $702,000 beyond that original $900,000 for the capital project ordinance tonight comes from ARPA funds that were previously committed to the Crabtree Creek Nature Park project, given its current delay. An alternative to that, should you not be comfortable with using those ARPA funds, keeping in mind that we do need to commit those funds by the end of this calendar year and need to or encumber those by the end of this year and then spend them by the end of 26. If you were not comfortable with ARPA funds, the alternative would be to use various reserves to fund the $700,000. So again, just a summary to make sure that all the sort of numbers are out there. The original pre-development estimate was 1,174. We've added $321,000 to that. So we're at a subtotal of 1,495. The total management fee is 105. And so when we're all done with pre-development costs, we're at approximately $1.6 million. A reminder, we shared this with you when we talked about this in May. Thought it was worth sharing again. This work has value to the town. I think it even has more value now as we get closer and closer to that development agreement and to putting a shovel in the ground. The infrastructure is anticipated to be built almost regardless of whether town center proceeds now or later. The town green is a viable park option independent of the overall project. It would be essentially shovel ready if for any reason the full project didn't move. But have to acknowledge that there is some of this investment that might not be recoverable if there was a future decision to go with a project that was not substantially similar in design, but we've not had any such conversations. We anticipate this to be the project, but want to be transparent with you and with the community. So with that, would entertain any questions and discussions on this proposed amendment to the pre-development agreement. So there is a resolution for that along with a capital project ordinance amendment. And then just as a quick reminder of timeline, we're updating you now in January. Ideally, April 24, we'll have that independent construction estimate. We'll also take this to you the first time with the full development services agreement in April. Also seek that LGC approval in late April, and then likely come back in early May to seek approval of the development services agreement. June, we'll have a bond sale, which will help to fund the construction for this. End of this calendar year, construction would begin. End of calendar year 26, phase 1A should be ready to be operational. Happy to take any questions. Beyond that, the request is on the screen.
Okay, just to be clear, our agenda shows action on the 13th of February? Or...
Correct. This is the action requested February 13th.
Okay, yep, I see the top now. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Abadi, followed by Councilmember Rao.
I think Councilmember Rao was
No,
first.
okay.
You've been up for a while, yeah.
Yeah, going back to slide 4, Brandon, it appears to me that most of the additional costs are in this additional clearscape design work. That makes up the bulk of the additional ask.
That is fair.
Could you explain to me how the scope of the work they would be doing came to be underestimated by that amount? That concerns me. That's a large amount.
It is. And so, there was originally a placeholder there for, I I'd have to go back and look. It was several $100,000 for that work. But as we've gone into that, there's been, I think, more discussion with council than they necessarily anticipated. There's been more work to react to council feedback, which is exactly what we want to do. But they did not anticipate the level of work that would be going on and the level of, I think, back and forth that we would use to make sure that we were ultimately meeting your vision on this. So it was an underestimate. The initial was their best estimate based on work they'd done on similar projects. And we've just had much more interaction with them to get to the level of detail we're at now.
So do you anticipate that there's anything that you could do differently on other projects that would prevent this type of surprise?
So I think it really depends on the type of project. We're making conscious efforts to do better with cost estimating overall. And I would say that cost estimating is easier when you have a clear sort of picture going into it. And so in this case, we really did, we had the development plan, of course, that you've seen, but that was a very general, we know we want some cottage retail, we know we want a green, we know we want a stage. But as we really started digging into that, a lot of design work went into that you wouldn't necessarily see in a more traditional project. So I do think some of this is really related to the fact that this is a very unique project for us. But again, we continue to work with the cost estimator. And, if we did something of this scope again, I think we learn lessons in every phase of this as to how this works. And again, our capital projects team has been directly involved with helping us with this. And so I do think we'll be able to focus more upfront on what detail we think we can provide in the future.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rao, followed by Councilmember Fender.
Yeah, my concern was some of the design costs being a lot more, but I think you've answered my question. So I think just keep an eye on that. I just want to know, as we move forward with this project, what will be the different kinds of processes to continue to get public input? And I know we're already doing that, but, just in terms of will there be open houses, people knowing, where this money is going and those kinds of things?
Yeah, so once we can, sorry, that's really close and loud. Once we can get to the point where I think we have something that council is comfortable with, we will certainly go back to the public and share that with them and get their input on that as to what their thoughts are on that. We've clearly have used the input we've received up to this point to develop this concept plan, this development plan, and then we've also used your feedback along with that. So I think once we settle on a more consistent design concept, that would be the time to go back to the public to say, here's the next iteration of what we believe we're designing for you. Please share your feedback with us.
Okay. I think that's just important to can you do that.
Agree.
You did a Facebook Live a couple months ago, probably presented that, but just whatever we can do to continue to educate the public.
Yes, sir.
It's a lot of money,
Yes.
but it's worth the investment. But I think I just want to show kind of the timeline of what's coming down the pike.
Absolutely. I think transparency with this project is vital.
Councilmember Fender, please.
Make sure I turn this on this time. So on this slide, that $211,000 for clearscapes, is that work that has already been performed by them, or work that we anticipate will be?
That is a lot of the work that's already been performed with them. That does anticipate some work. I will tell you that tonight's discussion will likely result in additional funding because not necessarily a discussion we anticipated. So yes, there is some, we know there's still work to be done, but as we continue to potentially modify the design, that will add cost.
So based on our discussion tonight, we anticipate that $211,000 to increase.
I would expect it would. I don't think that that's a significant increase. And again, would also suggest that I think we'll be able to balance that with the fact that most of the estimates here are on the high side to be conservative and to not be surprised. So I think that given what we're doing right now, I would expect that to at least come close to balancing itself.
Okay. And then what about the $60,000 for Kimley Horn for traffic and parking studies? Has that work already been performed?
Some of that work has been performed, some of that work will still be to come, but that's planning for current, or I should say, completed and future work.
All right. So then on the next slide, I'm trying to parse this out because initially when I look at this, it made me think that you were requesting an additional 702,000, but we're really requesting an additional 321,000.
That's correct. The 335 we knew would be there, and we anticipated back in May of 23 covering that through the development agreement. But because we've delayed that to ensure we have a GMP for you, we're including now the original 335 that you anticipated. So yes, the additional is 321 plus the 7% tacked on to that. So 340-ish.
And yeah, and you had incorporated a 7% management fee previously, so now the 7% is probably just a little bit more than previously calculated.
Yes.
Okay. So you're really really the cost has only increased by a bit more than 321.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That makes me feel better. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? Okay. So we're scheduled to vote on this on the 13th of next month.
All right.
Anything
Thank you
else?
very much.
Nope, all set.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can I ask one question? I was waiting for you to go over the timeline. Are we still on target with the projected timeline too?
So we were talking in the lobby very briefly before reconvening. So I think we have to take a look at the level of detailed work that may be needed. We're going to bring this back to you as soon as possible to give you a look at what the options you discussed will be. Depending on how quickly we can bring that back, that could push this a little bit. You know, because right now we're at 3 weeks from our next meeting because we have that extra gap in between these. So it could push this back potentially a month. That's based on what I know tonight without having really sat down and worked through with them what that might look like. But just because of delay to the next meeting potentially, if we can return that quickly, yeah, I think a month.
Councilmember Fender?
Yeah, Brandon, so I have a follow-up question. Can you go to your slide 11? So the way that second bullet point reads is that we're going to authorize additional funding in the amount of $702,000. But we're not doing that.
No, you are in this case. Keep in mind, you didn't authorize the 335 originally. We acknowledged it would come in the pre-development agreement, but you did not authorize that funding. You authorized the funding just for calendar year 23. And then we had that note. Let me go back to where we had that there. So you remember, this is exactly the slide we showed you in May, which said that there would be another 335 for calendar year 24 that we anticipated funding out of the development services agreement. But because we're not doing that agreement now, we do need you to fund that 335 plus the 321 plus the 7%. So that's the 702, because your original authorization was only 900,000, not the full 1.174.
Okay, all right. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Would it get any part of that month back if we authorize this tonight? Just putting it out there.
No, this authorization is really just the cost of the work.
Okay.
You know, we will work as quickly as we can.
Right.
But again, they're just by timing right now, we lose a week because the next meeting is not till February 13th, so 3 weeks. We will do our best to come back that night. But again, that's based on a 5-minute conversation in the lobby 30 minutes ago. So.
Okay, so the hope tonight was that we would have given clear direction, like a yes to the promenade, et cetera.
Well, I mean, I think in a perfect world, perhaps, but I knew that, you know, obviously what we were bringing back in terms to the water feature was not exactly what you had sort of directed us to do, but we felt we owed you that explanation of, you know, because again, that's we say yes when you say what you want, that we will do our best to present that to you. But that's when you bring in the experts like Fred and Cameron that then show you other concepts to consider or why you may want to consider things differently. And they've done a lot of work, and again, along particularly with Mary on how we're looking at that town green. And so, yes, they've really helped us with that. But we need to continue now to work on that.
Okay, because I'm confident after that discussion, we're going to get something better. So
No, absolutely. It was
really good.
Very good feedback.
Yeah.
I think there was some consensus, but we'll bring you back a couple options that might address the different things we heard.
Okay. As you said, as we're getting closer, we're going to be talking about this more and more.
Correct.
As we keep it going. So thank you very much for all your hard
Yep.
work.
Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we are at future meetings, events, and community engagement opportunities. We had a lot going on last month, so I'd like to say that coming up, we just really have a lot of resident advisory committee meetings coming up. There's Smart City this Thursday and Parks and Rec a week from tomorrow. And they are like this meeting, which is to say open to the public. And those committees like us would love for you to attend and share your thoughts, because hearing directly from you is the best way for us to know what you want us to prioritize on your behalf. Our initial budget survey will remain open for your input until Friday, February 2nd at noon, and the link is available on our website and our many social media platforms. So at this time, we're at council and manager comments. I will start off with Mayor Pro Tem Garamella, followed by Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Other than we had an excellent retreat, and thanks to staff and particularly Brianna for helping ensure all the arrangements were done correctly. Other than that, nothing. Looking forward for the budget season.
Okay, Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, followed by myself.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy New Year to everybody. We had our last council meeting postponed, or actually canceled, due to inclement weather. So we had a wonderful budget retreat this past weekend, and we discussed a lot of topics in depth. So we are gearing up for a really productive discussion for our 2025 budget cycle. So I look forward to discussing more. The budget portal is open, I believe, and feedback is being received. So if you have some feedback for us, we would really appreciate it, because that portal is one of the inputs that we monitor regularly. So thank you.
Okay, it'll be me, followed by Councilmember Rabati. As was mentioned, a big thank you to our staff for providing a wonderful opportunity for your council to share our thoughts about how we feel we can best allocate our town's current and future resources to meet the needs and desires of our residents. And to my fellow council members, I appreciate each of you for the perspective you bring to the group. It is my hope that through our discussions, even when we disagree on some details, we can be aligned to support what our expert accredited staff tells us is necessary to reach our optimal levels of efficiency and effectiveness. Councilmember Rabati, followed by Councilmember Fender.
I'd like to echo what my fellow council members have already said about the retreat. It was indeed really great, and thank you so much to the staff. I know what type of work goes into that type of productive weekend, and you all did a great job again. And I had the opportunity to attend the Doc NC Thank You Seniors event at the HSNC a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to shout them out for just a great cultural event, and to see how much the kids appreciate the seniors and how tied they are, how intertwined they are with their cultural heritage is really inspiring, and I love those events. Thank you.
Excellent. Councilmember Fender, followed by Councilmember Rao.
Could just say same. Which, when teenagers started saying that, really drove me nuts. But yeah, I truly enjoyed this weekend, our town council retreat, hanging out and getting to know our staff a lot better, and then also hanging out with our fellow town council members. It was a really good weekend. That's all I have.
Okay. Councilmember Rao, followed by Councilmember Johnson.
Just a few. comments. First of all, ditto on the retreat, one of the best I've ever attended, participated in. I got a request about some speeding on Church Street going into Keystone Park Drive. So I will forward that to the administration and Brandon Zuma and Giselle, if you could look into it. I don't want to get into the details, but its emails come in a couple times, and they'd like to talk to the staff about it. Enjoyed attending a lot of Triangle MLK events in Holly Springs, Apex, Fuquay, and Durham, and hoping that we can do more of that with our cultural events next year. In a week or so, the Indian ambassador, Tiranjit Sendhu, will be retiring his service to the nation of India and moving back to India. And it made me think of this council that we hosted him at the HSNC, and Mayor Pro Tem Garamella presented him with the key to the city, which was an emotional moment for him. And I just thought that was so cool that we got to meet an Indian ambassador. So we wish him well as he returns to India, and hopefully they'll name a new ambassador soon. My final two things is I had no car until Friday, so I've been having to Uber and Lyft everywhere and kind of get creative about how to get to places. And the greenways and the shuttle have been great, but it has been harder than I thought. And I think it's a good exercise for all of us to kind of think, what's it like to live without a car, and what kinds of investments can we make to make it easier, to go on bus and go on rail. I know we're going to be addressing some of these issues on Friday, but I think it's really important. And the final point, in retreat, we talked about economic development. And this morning, some of us, Mayor and I, were at the Azure Group where we toured their facility. That was a great event by the Chamber. But this morning, I met with the CEO of a company called P-Mill Construction, named Jitan Patel. And what his company does is they refurbish offices for tech startups. And they're doing a lot of really good stuff in Morrisville. They've got Kia Labs, AlgaeNets, Cosmic Eats, which are a few growing companies, and two of Bill Gates' investments in renewable energy and carbon capture, Susteon and Sostera, are actually now located in Morrisville. At least one of them is. And what's amazing to me is that he said that of all these companies that they're coming in and refurbishing and putting in these office spaces, he's got at least 4 to 5 that could be $3 billion companies. So I thought that was very interesting when you talked about building the pipeline. What can we do to build that pipeline and get them more active with our chamber and our economic development efforts? So I just wanted to share that with the public and the group, and know that we're working on economic development strategies. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson, please.
So I'm going to echo what everyone said about the retreat as well, but I've got to say it publicly. Thank you all very much. Town Manager Zudema, your first retreat was excellent. So I appreciate, as a town manager, your first retreat as a town manager, you all did an excellent job. I thank the staff that took the time the weekend to be with us. I thank my fellow council members. We had some really heavy topics, some really important topics that we needed to make decisions on. And I think we did a really excellent job of coming together and making those decisions. So thank you all as well. Thank you to our interim town clerk, Michelle Parker Evans. Thank you for helping us out. And congratulations to Deputy Town Clerk Bianca McCain. And Bianca was instrumental in everything that happened at the retreat too, with logistics, and she did a phenomenal job. So I thank her as well. And then lastly, I just want to say heartfelt thank you and congratulations to Lieutenant Tim Hendrickson. He has retired. We earlier tonight passed a resolution to give him his firearm, and I just found out yesterday was his last day. I didn't realize that. So I wish him all the best in the world, well-deserved retirement. He was with us here in Morrisville for 23 and a half years, so almost as long as me and Jeannie. So anyhow, I wish him all the best. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you all. Town Manager Zudema, anything for the good of the order from staff?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So this concludes the public part of our meeting. We have one closed session this evening to discuss economic development and to discuss a matter of attorney-client privilege. As we have no plans to conduct any public business after the closed session at this time, I would like to thank you for attending this meeting of the Morrisville Town Council. We hope you plan to join us again. Please feel free to email your town council members at towncouncil@townofmorrisville.org or visit www.townofmorrisville.org/council for additional contact information. That one still works, even though we're now morrisvillenc.gov/council. At this time, I'd ask for a motion to enter into closed session.
Mayor and council, pursuant to North Carolina statute 143.3.318, we are moving to closed session to address a handful of matter.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously. It is 8:36. We are now in closed session. Thank you for coming.